These are always really interesting to me, and I want to point out that because of how fluid college football is nowadays and recruiting is nowadays, I think that you can invalidate a little bit of these types of lists. But ESPN put out their future rankings. They've done this. They do this with positions sometimes, like future quarterback rankings, future offense rankings, future defense rankings, so on and so forth. But this is just future rankings in general through 2026. Right? Let's double check that through 2026. So that means this season, 2024, the 2025 season, the 2026 season. So these next 3 seasons, Georgia's at the top, at least according to ESPN. Georgia is number 1 for these next 3 seasons. I think it's interesting, some of what they had to say. I was just reading a little bit of it. Some of it I want to be a raw reaction to you guys. I'll read the whole thing, actually, to be honest with you. 4 big paragraphs, but I'll read it. I won't be able to show it on screen. I'll try to get through it pretty fast, but just real quick. They've got Georgia at 1, future rankings, Ohio State at 2, Texas at 3. I'm reading this for the first time. The only thing I looked at was what they had for Georgia. Texas at 3. So far it's just the college football rankings for this year. Alabama at 4, Michigan at 5, Oregon 10 or Oregon 6. We'll go to 10. Notre Dame 7, LSU 8, Florida State 9, Penn State 10. It goes past that. They got USC 11. We can get into the rest of it later, but that was your top 10. And that top 3 is just what people think the top 3 is this year. Georgia, Ohio State, and Texas for the most part. Some people have Oregon ahead of Texas. So they've got the future quarterback ranking for Georgia. They have them at 4. That was a top 5 finish. I think they just did the top 5 or 10 when they did produce that article a few months ago. So they have Georgia at 4. For future defense ranking, Georgia at 1. That fly's killing me. I do think Georgia's. I can say, yeah. I'm having a hard time talking. I do think that Georgia's future defense is going to be really good. The way that they recruited it the last 2 years and the way it's looking like they could end up with the 25 and the 26 classes, they look good to me. Future offense ranking 3, okay. Future team ranking back in 2023 when they did this, they did it again. So Georgia is their repeat number 1 for this. Ryan Cooley from Dawg Post talking about ESPN's future rankings, and they've got Georgia at number 1. Please sign up for our newsletter. I'm not begging you, but I am asking you nicely, and I am thanking you if you've already done it. That link is in the description of this article found below. If you are watching, on your TV, look it up. Just Google Dawg Post newsletter. I've had a handful of people tell me, "Hey, I like to get you guys and watch on our smart TV. It's cool. We can have you in the background on the TV. I can't sign up for the newsletter that way. Just look up Dawg Post newsletter. It'll pop up." Let's go ahead and we'll do a little bit at a time. But I'm going to specify that I'm reading because people are still getting confused with when I say "I" in quotes on whether it's something I think or something someone else thinks. I'm reading now. Scouting the Bulldogs. Georgia retained the top spot in the team rankings, and the choice wasn't very difficult. If the Bulldogs had stayed healthier down the stretch last season, they might have claimed a 3rd consecutive national title after being ranked number 1 for most of the fall. They will enter 2024 as the frontrunners for a championship, led by Heisman Trophy contender Carson Beck at quarterback and a deep and talented defense. Georgia also has more stability than many perennial top 5 teams, as Coach Kirby Smart is signed through 2033, and the team is still viewed as one to beat in the SEC. The team signed ESPN's top-rated 2024 recruiting class, headlined by corner Ellis Robinson IV and inside linebacker Justin Williams, and 3 other defenders ranked in the top 26 nationally. Done reading. We'll get to more, but let's go ahead and talk about that first paragraph. I want to go back. Georgia has more stability than any other perennial top 5 teams as Kirby Smart is signed through the 2033. Well, Kirby is signed through 2033. I do expect him to live out that contract as the Georgia coach, but there is no concept of stability. I think that for most programs at this point. For Georgia, but even Alabama has had some lack of stability because they just had a changing of the guard with Nick Saban to Kalen DeBoer. But now with Georgia, obviously, I do think that is the most stable situation. So they're not reaching them when they say that. But in general, I don't think the stability exists the way it used to in college football. Keep that in mind. Let's move on to the next paragraph. Georgia's defensive setup is unmatched as a front seven loaded with depth and emerging star power, including linebackers Jalen Walker and Mykel Williams, guys who may only be here for one more season this season. And the next three guys are only going to be here. The next four guys they listed are only going to be here for the rest of it. Here we go. I'm reading again. Notable senior returnees include linebackers Smile Munden Jr. and Chaz Chambliss, and interior linemen Nazir Stackhouse and Warren Brinson. All-America safety Malachi Starks is back, and if Georgia can fortify the cornerback spot in the short term, the unit seemingly has no weaknesses. The Bulldogs also recently added a commitment from outside linebacker Zayden Walker, ESPN's number 15 recruit in the 2025 class. That it was a big recent commitment for Georgia. Usually, I think that one will stick, is really what I'm trying to say. So defense, yeah, I mentioned or foreshadowed a little bit. Look, a couple of guys, just a couple of 5 stars in Georgia 5 stars, just decommitted from USC, from Southern California. Kind of weird how randomly they committed to the Trojans back a few months ago within the last year. And that, like Justice Terry, and I'm blanking on the other guy. I'm sorry, I'm not Matt DeBerry. I'm not the recruiting genius that he is. I'm blanking on the other one. He was an edge rusher or an outside linebacker, and Georgia has traction with those guys. So there's always going to be a lot of talent in the state of Georgia. You have a leg up when you have Kirby, when you have this in-state, in your backyard. So I do think that they're going to be able to just kind of replenish that. In terms of the defense, 2024 future defense ranking being number 1, I agree with that. This paragraph is about the offense. They've got Georgia as 3. And let's see. They've got Ohio State as future offense number 1. And they've got Texas as future offense number 2. So there you go. They got Ohio State, Texas, and Georgia as the top 3 future offenses for this next 3 seasons. And that's probably fair. Texas, Ohio State, recruiting, the way that they recruit the wide receiver position at Ohio State is unreal. They are recruiting running backs really well right now. Texas doing a good overall job. I don't know their names as much on here that I'm looking through on these recruits, but I mean, that's fine. It's hard to rank these things. That's fine with me. This next paragraph is about the offense. Let's get into it. The quarterback rankings were compiled before Jaden Rashada, an ESPN top 35 recruit in 2023. So Georgia, timeout. They had Georgia at 4 for future quarterback rankings. Time in. Transfer from Arizona State to provide another capable option following Beck's exit next season. Rashada will compete with Gunnar Stockton and Ryan Puglisi and should keep the offense on a strong trajectory. Despite losing Brock Bowers, Georgia has the nation's best tight end setup with junior Oscar Delp, Stanford transfer Benjamin Urasek, including incoming freshman Jaden Riddell, and the nation's top 225 tight end recruits in Ellis Williams and Ethan Barber. Okay, they didn't mention Lawson Lucky in that when talking about all the tight ends. Another highly recruited tight end who will be entering year 2, a guy who's got incredible explosiveness, a nifty guy for a tight end, a little bit on the smaller side in a way that Brock Bowers was. Don't think that he's necessarily the contested catch freak and the tackle breaking freak that Brock Bowers was, but another electrifying option that they can have at the tight end room. All of these guys, super athletic. I really like Jaden Riddell. I've talked about the tight ends before, earlier in the offseason, probably a couple months ago. He's the current freshman. I thought he looked good at G-Day. I saw Ellis Williams in person last Black Friday, Camden versus Mill Creek, and Ellis, you can see that he's a freak. The dude's like 6'7", super long, can really go up and get the ball. I watched him go up and not get the ball when I was over there, but I know that he's got it in him based off what I watched. Let's move on. They talk about the offense again in this next paragraph. I will not pause. I will get through the whole thing. It's quick. Running back depth also jumps out with Florida transfer Trevor Etienne, Roderick Robinson II, Branson Robinson and others, including freshman Nate Frazier, ESPN's number 3 back and number 62 overall recruit. Senior guard Tate Ratledge, a second-team All-American selection in 2023, is back to lead an offensive line that should remain a team strength as tackle Ernest Green III and others will play through 2025. Wide receiver is the one iffy spot. Although Dominic Lovett provides short-term leadership, Ra Thomas and Miami transfer Kobe Young should help. So, what does he mean? The wide receiver room is the iffy spot. Georgia has not, quote unquote, recruited the wide receiver position at an elite level necessarily. We know that. They don't go out and get all these 5 stars. They do get a really highly recruited guy every once in a while, George Pickens most recently, but they get good enough players and they go out and find them. They go out and find A.D. Mitchell. They go out and find Lab McConkey. Those guys make a huge impact. So Georgia, that's kind of ESPN's roundup of why they are ranked that high. Let's just real quick, I'll give you 1 or 2 sentences from each Ohio State and Texas, then we'll call it a video. Here's the first couple sentences for Ohio State. A team with no league titles since 2020 and just 1 CFP win since 2014 typically wouldn't occupy the number 2 spot in FPR, but questions around other contenders, plus the Buckeyes' pedal-down personnel approach this offseason has them positioned to lead their national title drought soon. Interesting take there with Ohio State. Interesting take there. Talking about how they haven't been as successful as you would think they would, but that shouldn't stop you from thinking they'll be successful in the future because you look around, is Alabama as good as a spot? Are these other teams in as good of a spot? Michigan's not, just point blank. So I understand the reasoning there, but, putting them higher than he wanted to. Texas, they said Texas didn't even appear in these rankings 2 years ago. That's all you have to say. Is Texas back? We'll find out on October 19th.